The bar pulsed with dim red light, smoke curling through vents that never worked quite right. The air reeked of ozone, stale drink, and grease from the nearby docks. A dozen species crowded the tables, armored traders and mercenaries boasting about contracts that had turned planets into ashes. At the center of the noise sat the war bidders, arms dealers and ceremonial scale cloaks, laughing over the outcome of yet another conflict they had funded from both sides. Credits flowed, blood spilled, and their ledgers fattened. They toasted to profit while the rest of the galaxy buried its dead. Near the counter, a hooded figure sat in silence, motionless except for the slow rotation of the glass between scarred fingers. The bartender, a patched-up android with mismatched eyes, poured another drink without a word. Nobody knew his name. Humans were rare in this sector, too unpredictable, too haunted, and most who came through didn't stay long. The hooded man's posture was unreadable, heavy and composed, as if gravity clung tighter to him than to anyone else in the room. The bidders' laughter turned in his direction. The eldest among them, a scaled brute with golden fangs, raised a claw. "Look at that one," he drawled, his voice slick with drink. "One of the Deathworld apes, isn't he? I thought they all went extinct or joined mercenary fodder ranks." The others joined in, jeering at the human's stillness. "Maybe he's one of those Terrans who think war's a virtue. You people break easy, too much pride, too little exoskin." Another hissed. "You fought, didn't you? How many of your kind ran crying when real fire met your bones?" The human didn't look up. The android's servos whined as it drifted a step back, muttering in static, as though it recognized something the others didn't. The man's gloved thumb rubbed the edge of the glass, and the room's laughter grew louder, echoing in metallic tones. They found entertainment in prodding the one creature who didn't respond. "Hey, hooded man," one bidder sneered, slamming his cup. "Tell us, how does a fragile species like yours end up drinking alone after losing so many wars?" The man's head tilted just slightly, enough to let the dim light catch part of his face, a jagged scar that ran from jaw to temple. It silenced a few chuckles. The voice that came from beneath the hood was gravel softened by exhaustion, deep and unshaken. "Wars aren't lost," he said quietly. "Only forgotten." The words rolled through the room like a slow, cold current. Some snickered again to mask discomfort. The eldest leaned forward, smirking. "Oh, the philosopher speaks. Tell me, little ape, what do you know about war? We bid them, we build them, we own them. Without us, war doesn't exist." The human finally set the glass down. "You sell war like it's theater," he murmured. "You profit from screams you've never heard. I've seen the worlds you auction." His voice didn't rise, didn't tremble. It carried the weight of someone who had stood in ruins long enough that no insult could touch him. Mocking laughter returned, brittle this time. "You've seen nothing but your own extinction, Deathworlder. You all pretend to be soldiers because you've forgotten how to die with dignity." One alien reached out, pushing his shoulder to provoke a reaction. The human didn't flinch. The touch lasted barely a second before the alien jerked back, whispering a curse. His palm had grazed the edge of cold metal beneath the cloak. The human's fingers flexed once, slow and deliberate. His other hand rested on the counter again. The silence that followed was unnatural in a place built for noise. When he finally spoke, it wasn't a threat, it was a statement, flat and absolute. "You trade in battles. I survived them." For a long heartbeat, nobody moved. The bartender froze mid-clean, optic lights flickering. The bidders exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they were being challenged or warned. The eldest leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Survived them? Big claim for a species that dies by the billions." The hooded man finished his drink in one swallow and set it down carefully, the sound of glass meeting metal sharp and final. His gloved hand rested beside it, steady as stone. "You count wars by profit margins," he said, voice quiet as the hum of the ship engines outside. "I count them by scars." A slow grin spread across the alien's face, fangs glinting under the red light. "Scars? Show us, then. Show us how your kind measures pain." The man didn't answer. He stood, pulling his hood lower as he turned toward the exit. The bar's chatter resumed, nervous, uncertain. Yet something in his silence clung to the air like smoke, an unspoken promise that he wasn't just another wanderer hiding from his past. The android watched him go, whispering through crackled static. "You fools never learn. When humans go quiet, something's about to end." The door hissed open, spilling the cold light of the corridor across the floor. He paused once at the threshold, his shadow stretching across the bar's stained metal. Without turning back, he said one final line that froze every sneer in the room. "You sell war. I bury it." Then he walked into the dark, leaving behind a silence so deep even the engines seemed to hold their breath. The following night, the same bar sat quieter than usual, though the air still smelled of iron and smoke. The hooded man returned to his usual seat, the same untouched drink before him. The war bidders gathered again, tension simmering beneath forced laughter. Their pride hadn't healed from the night before. The eldest bidder, scales shimmering with heat from drink and anger, slammed his claw on the table. "The ape thinks he knows war," he growled. "Let him prove it." His words drew the attention of every patron. The human lifted his gaze slowly, the hood shadowing half his face. "You don't want proof," he replied, voice low and dry. "Proof has a way of changing men." The scaled brute sneered. "We are not men." Laughter broke the tension for a breath. Then, in one deliberate motion, the man began unfastening the glove on his right hand. The sound of tearing leather silenced the room. The glove hit the table with a soft thud. Pale skin gleamed under the red light, a map of burns, grafts, and embedded steel. Across his forearm ran dozens of carved tally marks, each uneven, etched deep by hand, old wounds turned into ritual. Some cut through skin, others scratched into metallic plating fused with flesh. Every mark told a story too long for words. The eldest bidder leaned closer, his grin fading as he traced the pattern with his eyes. "What are those?" he asked, though the answer was already clawing at his mind. The man's tone carried no pride, no sorrow, only memory. "One mark for every war survived." A murmur rippled through the bar. Someone whispered, "That many?" The human rolled up his sleeve further, revealing more tally marks stretching nearly to the shoulder, some charred black, others carved over scars that had long since healed. "These aren't victories," he said softly. "They're reminders that I walked out when no one else did." The bartender's servos whined as it stepped back, its optical sensor flickering in recognition. The symbol etched beneath the last mark, 3 concentric rings, was unmistakable, the insignia of the Terran Vanguard, a name that still haunted war records across the stars. The android muttered in static, "Impossible. That unit was wiped out during the siege of Varaxis." The man didn't correct it. He simply turned his wrist, showing a line of melted alloy running down to his elbow. "We burned there," he said. "Every sky fell. Every river boiled. But someone had to stay behind to make sure it didn't happen again." The scaled bidder's jaw twitched. "You expect us to believe you survived that?" The man looked directly at him, eyes gray and steady. "You don't survive. You endure." He pointed toward the alien's chest plate. A faint scar ran across it, an old plasma burn. "You sold weapons to the people who did that. Same manufacturer, same burn pattern." The alien flinched unconsciously. "I was there," the man added. "You might have made the deal. I buried what came after." A smaller bidder whispered, "That's not possible. No one lived through Varaxis." The human turned his palm upward, the metal glinting. "Then maybe I didn't." Silence thickened until even the hum of the air recyclers felt loud. The bar's crowd sat frozen between disbelief and something darker, fear of what kind of creature bore that many scars and still breathed. The man flexed his hand once. The faint sound of servos echoed through the bar. "You treat war like an auction," he continued. "Highest bidder wins, lowest bidder dies. You never see the aftermath, just the numbers. To you, it's profit. To me, it's noise that doesn't stop when you sleep." The eldest bidder forced a laugh, brittle and uncertain. "So you survived?" That's all? The human's faint smile held no warmth. That's enough. His gaze drifted across the crowd, meeting every eye that dared hold his. You measure power by what you sell. I measure it by what I've lost and still remember. The room felt smaller, airtighter, as the reality of him sank in. He wasn't a wanderer, they had mocked a relic from humanity's worst years. A creature carved from every battlefield they'd only heard of. The hooded man pulled the glove back on slowly, hiding the tally marks again. As he did, a single statement cut through the silence. You call them wars. We called them home. No one laughed. Even the bartender froze, glass in hand, staring at the man like a ghost had walked through the door. The hooded human adjusted his cloak, finished his drink, and left behind a credit chip larger than anyone dared to touch. When the door hissed closed behind him, the only sound was the faint ticking of a cooling plasma blade, a reminder that for some species, survival was no miracle. It was habit. The war bidders couldn't let it end. Their pride wouldn't allow silence to linger, not after being made to look small in front of the entire bar. The eldest bidder leaned forward, claws tapping the metal table like a drumbeat of defiance. Fine, ape, he said, voice thick with venom. Show us the warrior beneath the scars. He drew a plasma blade and slammed it down, its heat casting blue firelight across the walls. You claim endurance. Let's see it. The human didn't move for several seconds. The glow of the blade reflected in the faint sheen of his eyes. You want a demonstration? His tone carried no emotion, only fatigue, as if this moment had happened 1,000 times before. War isn't theater, he said, but they pushed him anyway, taunts, laughter, daring him to back down. He exhaled slowly, the kind of sigh that came from someone tired of warnings being ignored. You learn nothing until pain speaks. He stood, pulling the hood lower. The shift of fabric revealed glimpses of metal beneath skin, faint lines where prosthetics met flesh. The crowd made space as if instinct recognized what logic hadn't yet processed. The alien lunged first, all teeth and arrogance, expecting a clumsy defense. The man's movement was a blur, minimal, precise. A single sidestep, a twist of the wrist, and the plasma knife clattered away. In the same motion, the alien found himself face first on the floor, the human's boot pinning his wrist. No flourish, no sound of struggle, just execution-level control born from repetition. The others froze. The man didn't gloat. His grip was calm, measured, detached. You fight for dominance, he said, voice low enough for only the front tables to hear. We fought to survive extinction. You can't compare the two. He released his hold, allowing the alien to rise, humiliated but breathing. I don't fight for pride anymore, he continued. I fight so no one else has to. The eldest snarled and reached for another weapon, but stopped midway. The man's gaze met his, a stillness so absolute it felt like gravity itself shifted. He wasn't angry, he was remembering. Every scar on his body wasn't a symbol of power but a ledger of survival, each one carved during moments that should have ended him. That realization drained the room of any thought of courage. The man turned toward the bar again, picking up his glass, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The alien leader finally spoke, quieter now. You could have killed me. The human nodded. Wouldn't change anything. Another bidder asked, voice trembling. How many wars have you walked through? The man's jaw tightened. Enough to forget the names. He downed what remained of his drink, eyes distant. But I remember the screams. They never leave. The crowd couldn't look away. The hooded human's every word felt like it came from somewhere beyond exhaustion, something closer to truth carved into bone. You think war ends when the shooting stops, he said. It doesn't. It just follows you home. One of the younger aliens, still clutching a data pad, whispered. Why keep fighting? The man turned to him, expression unreadable. Because if we stop, something worse starts. He set the glass down with a sound sharper than steel. Peace isn't the absence of war. It's the silence before the next scream. The only difference is who's ready when it comes. The eldest bidder, voice unsteady, muttered. You're insane. The human smirked faintly. No. Just experienced. He adjusted his glove, flexing the fingers that weren't fully organic. Insanity is repeating the same mistake expecting mercy. You'd know if you ever stood on a burning planet and called it victory. He placed a few credits on the counter and straightened. You wanted to see a warrior, he said softly. You saw a survivor. There's a difference. As he turned to leave, the bartender's mechanical voice murmured, Where do you go now? The man didn't look back. Wherever peace needs a warning. He walked out, steps echoing against the metal floor. The Warbidders said nothing. The plasma blade still burned where it lay, its light flickering like the last embers of arrogance fading into fear. They had asked to see war? For a few seconds they had. The bar stayed silent long after the hooded man left. Smoke hung heavy, curling through the dim red light like something afraid to move. The eldest Warbidder sat motionless, claws resting beside the still glowing plasma blade. His reflection in the metal floor looked smaller than before. The others whispered among themselves, their confidence cracked, their laughter replaced by unease. The android bartender cleaned a glass that didn't need cleaning, synthetic voice murmuring, You invited death to drink with you. One of the younger aliens activated a holopad, searching archives through trembling claws. The name that appeared made his crest flatten. Terran Vanguard, he whispered. The files were decades old, grainy footage and casualty lists longer than any world's population. Battlefields coated in ash. Human soldiers in armor marked by the same tally carvings the man had shown. Footage of cities still burning behind them as they marched forward. The entry log labeled them, Vanguard Division, last active unit of the human warfront. Every soldier accounted for, except one. The leader's voice rasped. That can't be him. They were annihilated. The android replied without looking up, tone flat but heavy. Records say they refused evacuation. Stayed behind to finish what others started. They burned their own dead so the enemy couldn't raise them. The android's hand paused mid-motion. You mocked a ghost. One bitter scales dimmed as realization set in. If he's still alive. The rest didn't let him finish. Fears shifted into instinctive calculation, contracts to cancel, shipments to reroute. They'd made fortunes fueling wars, but tonight profit had begun to taste like poison. The eldest bidder finally rose, voice lower than before. He said he buries war. Maybe that wasn't metaphor. Across the galaxy, whispers were already spreading. Dock workers swore they'd seen a hooded human boarding freighters bound for collapsing colonies. Mining crews on dead worlds told stories of a silent stranger walking battlefields at night, carving new tally marks in dust-covered walls. Some said he warned them before leaving, others claimed he dug trenches no one asked for, then vanished. The legends grew fast because fear travels faster than truth. Back in the bar, the leader poured another drink, hands shaking just enough to spill a drop. All these years we thought humans broke themselves trying to match us, he muttered. We never considered they kept getting stronger doing it. No one replied. Even arrogance knew when to stay quiet. The younger ones deleted their war ledgers from the station's system. The android dimmed the lights, saying softly, He didn't come here by chance. He came to remind you. A projection flickered across the wall, one of the old broadcasts from the Terran campaigns. A human commander stood in the ruins of a city, smoke behind him, voice coarse from exhaustion. You can't buy victory. You can only survive it. The quote lingered as static filled the air, echoing the same words the hooded man had spoken. The leader stared at the flicker until the projection shut down. We laughed at him, he said. We thought he was relic, not warning. He turned to the bartender. You knew what he was? The android nodded once. Humans leave traces. The way they walk, the silence they carry, it's the weight of remembered fire. A distant hum shook the glasses on the shelf, a freighter disengaging from the dock. Someone near the window saw it leaving and whispered, He's gone. Another answered, No. He's moving to the next bar that sells blood. Outside, the trade station's orbit glowed faintly against the void. The stars looked colder than before. The war bidders remained seated, each lost in the same unspoken thought, that for the first time, they'd met something money couldn't control or corrupt. A creature that had looked into the abyss and learned to walk it quietly. The bartender shut off the last light, voice almost reverent. You thought humanity vanished when the wars ended. But they never end, not for them. They carry them, scar by scar, mark by mark. When they come back, they don't bring peace. They bring reminder. In the silence that followed, only one phrase lingered in the minds of those who had seen him: you sell war. He buries it. The echo of it outlasted the night, spreading from mouth to mouth, until even planets untouched by conflict began to fear the day a hooded man with tally-scarred arms might walk through their doors and order a drink without a word.